There's so much propaganda that people ignore the real underlying issues. Like my friend said, Donald Trump didn't really win the election because he didn't get the popular vote or celebrity endorsements. Kim Kardashian endorsed Hillary Clinton. Something's wrong when a plastic surgery enthusiast thinks you keep it real. Under the veil of media propaganda, you need to understand the Federal Reserve's relationship to war. Many people are confused and wonder, how can the Federal Reserve be private? How could that happen? Well, it started with England in 1694. Go figure. We rebel against the British and then go copy their worst characteristics. William III of England was waging a war with Louis XIV of France. By the way, considering they're bitter enemies, not sure why they have the exact same haircut. You'd think they were pledging to the same sorority. Anyway, William III wants to fight, but no one wants to lend the dude money. Probably because at the time he was losing. So a scheme was concocted that private bankers will lend to William III if in return they can issue notes, aka print money, and lend to others with those loans as collateral. This Ponzi scheme was known as the Bank of England. If you think about it, the Bank of England is a giant Ponzi scheme. People only accept the paper money because it has the guarantee from the British Crown. But that's the same William III that no one would lend money to begin with because he's off having sorority PMS wars with France. Yeah, he'll pay you back. Minus the fact that 8 years later, William III died from falling off a horse. So why they honored him with the statue of a horse is kind of a cruel irony. I guess keep these guys away from the tome of Christopher Reeves. So a new system was concocted where the English government taxed people and paid the Bank of England LLC. In return, the LLC would print money and lend it back to the government. This is the same robust system our modern Federal Reserve uses. How Americans tolerate this, I don't understand. At least English peasants had the excuse of not having Twitter. I'm posting on Twitter about the dirty secret of central banks funding perpetual war. I can't believe they allow this. Hey, let me try posting about feminism. I've been blocked and banned. If the government ever paid back the Bank of England, the LLC would dissolve. So the bankers had to keep the wars going, so England always had to borrow. Who dares to question the divine right of kings? Hey, can I please borrow more money? For my word comes straight from God. Please just roll over the loan. Oh, please. Bankers funded both sides of the wars to keep them equal. This is how the Rothschild family got so rich. Nathan Rothschild funded Britain, and James Rothschild funded France. The Rothschilds have little control over central banking today, but they do own The Economist magazine, which bitches about Brexit. That's ironic. For hundreds of years, the Rothschilds literally funded perpetual war between Britain and all of Europe. Now they're saying, can't you all just get along in harmony of the EU and have peace? Accept these strangers into your lives. The modern banking conglomerates want an IMF world currency so they can control and print it easier. They use immigration as a tactic to blend national sovereignty away, which if you think about that combination is pretty hypocritical. Republicans should respect my ethnic and cultural differences. So let every country have their own currency. Everyone must be the same. To understand why bankers want a global currency, imagine the opposite situation. So I can write donkey dick on a piece of paper. The problem is it doesn't have much value because other people don't accept donkey dick. But if I could somehow convince or force them to, I'd be the most powerful man in the world. Although it'd be kind of redundant for Pizza Hut. You must accept donkey dick by the divine right of kings. Pizza Hut already accepts competitors' coupons. Well, do you accept US Treasuries? Nah, that's just too risky debt. Have you seen their liabilities? The tradition of politicians being puppets for bankers continues to this day. A WikiLeaks email from Citigroup's CEO to Obama's campaign manager Podesta shows they literally picked every position, even the defense ones, before Obama got into office. Although if I think about modern CIA coups, they sound a lot better than the Rothschild wars, right? The Rothschilds are back in power. We fight to the death for donkey dick. I miss Citigroup. Today's bankers want perpetual war because it forces the government's central bank to lower interest rates. First, I'll explain why the government wants low rates, then I'll explain why bankers want falling rates. To understand how low interest rates affect war, just think how it affects real estate shopping. Now imagine someone else is already occupying that home. Get a low down payment on conquering that guy's house. It's no coincidence that England had the lowest interest rates when they had the most powerful empire. But you might be wondering, why do banks want this? Well, when interest rates are lowered, financial assets go up in value. The stock market goes up. Bond market goes up. Banks make money. This is not the same, though, as saying banks want rock bottom rates. They want perpetually falling rates. It's like when you go out to a nightclub to score. You want a girl with falling self-esteem, but not rock bottom self-esteem. Hey, you have low self-esteem. Do you want to have sex? I don't think she's gonna make it. She has Obamacare. The yield curve is a measure of interest rates. Long-term rates are at the end. Short-term rates are at the start. When the Fed stimulates, they usually lower short-term rates, thus steepening the yield curve. Even Kim Kardashian takes one look at Fed interest rates and goes, "Now that's an artificially enhanced curve." Nicki Minaj said, quote, "I have Botox and liposuction, but you'd have to be blind to think these curves are natural." Banks want a very steep yield curve, since they borrow in the short term and lend in the long term. When the yield curve inverts, there's a recession and most banks go bust. And therein lies the irony. Banks encourage us to open retirement brokerage accounts and preach diversify, diversify. Then they go all in betting that the yield curve won't invert the slightest amount, and when it does, they all go bust. We only failed because of the overall economy. They didn't diversify. You can trust banks to manage risk. Hey William, why don't you go horse riding? Alright, so to review, the Federal Reserve prints money and buys short-term treasuries, artificially steepening the yield curve. Banks do not want high rates and they don't want low rates. They want steep rates since they borrow in the short term and lend in the long term. The steeper the yield curve, the higher a bank's profit margin. Now they've lowered short-term rates so much, they don't even pay interest to depositors. Ladies and gentlemen, come on down. Lend me money to make risky derivative bets and I promise to pay you back nothing. That's right. It's a good thing that liberals are often Buddhists, so they don't blame the Fed funds rate for the suffering. Bernie Sanders acknowledged that the Federal Reserve being controlled and owned by private banks is a conflict of interest, but he said we can't raise interest rates because then banks would benefit. So you want to get rid of the conflict of interest and then pursue the exact same policy. Millennials like Bernie Sanders. A millennial is defined as being born after 1982. What a coincidence, in 1981 interest rates were raised and all the banks went bust. But Bernie Sanders voters wouldn't remember that. To summarize, the Rothschilds are not in power today, but their model has been copied. Lobbyists and corporations push to have both sides of wars armed, so central banks are forced to steepen the yield curve when their governments get over-indebted. America armed both the Sunnis and Shiites of Syria and Iraq. In the 1990s, both sides of the Congo vs. Rwanda war were backed. In the 1980s, both Sunni Saddam and Shiite Iran were backed. The empire is circular. Printing money and lowering rates funds war. War conquers land that gives hard resources to back up that money. The Fed buys short-term bonds from the Treasury. This funds the military and CIA. The military and CIA conquer land and forces those nations to sell oil in US dollars through OPEC. This gives the dollar international value, so the Fed can print more, thus repeating the cycle. You see, printing money is war. War is printing money. They're one and the same. So the next time you hear Janet Yellen say, "Let's lower the Fed funds rate just a little bit," what she's trying to say is, hey, let's bomb some sand people. This video was animated by Southfront. Click the link in the description to check them out. They got quality frontline information on the Syrian war from an anti-establishment perspective.